He claimed the lives of 93 women. For decades, no one believed him. But today, the FBI calls him the most prolific serial killer in American history. While the nation obsessed over the names of Dahmer and Bundy, Samuel Little drifted through America's back roads and forgotten cities, a ghost in plain sight, unnoticed, underestimated, and unstoppable. His victims, women whose lives were often overlooked, women society chose not to see, and in the shadows of their silence, Samuel Little thrived. Samuel Little was born in Reynolds, Georgia, in 1940. From the very beginning, his life seemed marked by instability. His mother, a young woman with few resources, was unable, or perhaps unwilling, to care for him. He would later claim he was raised mostly by his grandmother, but the truth of those years is clouded in secrecy and neglect. As a boy, Little displayed the signs that often foreshadow darker paths: petty theft, truancy, violence. By his teenage years, he was already collecting arrests: shoplifting, burglary, assault. But behind those charges lay something more sinister: a fascination with overpowering women. Even in his youth, there were whispers of him luring, attacking, and escaping unnoticed. Samuel Little was not a man tied to one place. He drifted constantly, moving from Ohio to Florida to California, leaving behind scraps of police records, but never enough to build a clear picture. To authorities, he was a small-time criminal. To those who encountered him, he was just another drifter. But in truth, his transience was his camouflage. By the time most realized what he had done, he was already gone. He would later say the road itself became his home. Motel rooms, back alleys, truck stops, and the dark corners of America's forgotten towns. All of them were his hunting grounds. The drifting lifestyle that made him invisible to the world would also make him nearly impossible to track. From the 1970s through the 1990s, Samuel Little moved like a phantom across America, leaving a trail of bodies behind him. His victims were women on the margins of society, women who were struggling, women who were unseen. And to Samuel Little, that invisibility made them perfect targets. In 1982, in Pascagoula, Mississippi, a young woman named Melinda LaPrey vanished. She was only 22. Her body was later found, strangled, but the case went cold. No one could connect her death to a killer who was already on the move. In Los Angeles, 46-year-old Guadalupe Apodaca crossed paths with him. She never made it home. Little strangled her and left her discarded like trash. In 1987, in Los Angeles again, he took the life of Carol Alford, just 41 years old. 2 years later, in 1989, Audrey Nelson, 35, met the same fate. That very same year, Guadalupe Apodaca's name was joined by another, Guillermina Becky Cabrera, only 46, her life stolen in the very same way. The pattern was always the same: Samuel Little killed with his bare hands. No gun, no knife, no blood. Just strangulation. Silent, intimate, and deadly. A method that left little trace, and so, case after case was dismissed. Police chalked up the deaths to drug overdoses, accidents, or lifestyle choices. Women like Patricia Mount in Florida, Ruth Martin in Ohio, and so many others were filed away in cold case cabinets, while Samuel Little walked free, hunting again and again. He drifted endlessly: Florida, California, Ohio, Texas. Wherever he went, women disappeared. Some were mothers, some were daughters, some were never even identified, their names lost forever. And yet, Little himself went unnoticed. To the outside world, he was just another drifter, just another face moving through mugshots and arrest records for petty crimes. But beneath that mask, he was America's most prolific serial killer, strangling women in alleyways, on highways, in motels, and on back streets, before disappearing into the night, leaving behind only bodies and silence. For over 3 decades, Samuel Little strangled nearly 100 women, and no one saw him. Samuel Little was not a criminal mastermind. He didn't cover his tracks with elaborate plans or calculated misdirection. His greatest weapon was invisibility. For decades, the system itself worked in his favor. His victims were women society had already turned its back on: women of color, women battling addiction, women forced into sex work. Their disappearances rarely made the news. Their names weren't spoken in city council meetings. Their faces didn't appear on missing person flyers stapled to telephone poles. Too often, their deaths were written off as accidents, overdoses, the inevitable tragedy of a dangerous lifestyle. And when their families did demand answers, police departments were already overworked, underfunded, and unwilling to dig deeper. There was another problem: geography. Little never stayed in one place for long. He drifted across the country like smoke, killing in Florida, then in Mississippi, then vanishing to California or Ohio. Every jurisdiction worked in isolation, never realizing that the body on their slab connected to a trail of corpses spanning the entire nation. Back then, there was no national DNA database, no centralized system to share information across state lines. A murder in Texas stayed a murder in Texas. A missing woman in California stayed a local mystery. And Samuel Little slipped between the cracks. But perhaps the most chilling truth of all was how little value was placed on the lives of his victims. Investigators, judges, even jurors, they carried their own biases. Some openly dismissed the cases, assuming these women had simply brought about their own destruction. And so the files piled up. The victims became statistics, and the man responsible was free to hunt again. As one investigator would later admit, no one was looking for Samuel Little, and that's exactly how he got away with it. For over 30 years, he thrived in that silence, hiding in plain sight, an invisible predator, protected not by skill, but by indifference. In 2012, after decades of drifting undetected, Samuel Little's freedom came to an end in the most ordinary of ways. Not for murder, not for assault, but for a simple drug charge in Kentucky. Police fingerprinted him, collected his DNA, and that routine procedure cracked open one of the darkest chapters in American history. When the results came back, investigators were stunned. His genetic profile linked him to 3 long, cold murder cases in California. Women strangled in Los Angeles in the late 1980s. Cases that had sat unsolved for decades, gathering dust in forgotten evidence rooms. When questioned, Samuel Little sat calm, almost detached. His voice was steady. His eyes gave nothing away. He denied nothing. Yet he revealed nothing. A wall of silence that only deepened the sense of dread around him. But behind that silence, the unraveling had already begun. Detectives realized this wasn't a man connected to just 3 murders. They were staring into the face of a predator who had been killing, uninterrupted, for more than 30 years. For the first time, the mask Samuel Little had worn so well, the drifter, the petty thief, the man who could vanish into the background, had slipped. And what lay beneath was far more horrifying than anyone imagined. When investigators finally broke through Samuel Little's silence, what spilled out was not the usual trickle of denial, excuse, or half-truth. It was a flood. He began to talk, and once he started, he did not stop. He described women by name, by city, by the color of their clothing, the shape of their earrings, even the smell of the room they had last been in. He recalled faces with terrifying precision, as if they had been etched into his memory forever. One by one, he sketched them. Dozens of portraits, each drawn from memory. Faces of women the world had forgotten. Women the justice system had ignored. Women whose families had died, never knowing what happened to them. The FBI watched in disbelief. He wasn't boasting. He wasn't embellishing. His details, street corners, abandoned lots, cheap motel rooms, matched records they hadn't even shared with him. With each confession, the scope of his crimes grew larger. He claimed 93 victims. 93. At first, investigators thought it was impossible. Surely he was exaggerating. But then came the confirmation. Case after case, state after state. From Los Angeles to Miami, from Ohio to Texas. The FBI officially verified over 60 murders, making Samuel Little the most prolific serial killer in American history. And yet, even now, dozens of his claimed victims remain unconfirmed. Their identities still unknown, their bodies never found. For Samuel Little, they were not numbers. They were faces, frozen in time, filed away in the dark corners of his mind. By the time Samuel Little died in 2020, the world finally knew his name. Not because he sought the spotlight, but because the weight of his confessions had forced the truth into the open. The FBI declared him the most prolific serial killer in U.S. history, a predator who stalked the forgotten, who thrived in the cracks of a broken system. His case exposed a painful truth. For decades, law enforcement overlooked women who lived on the margins. Women who were black, women who were poor, women struggling with addiction or homelessness. Their disappearances rarely made headlines. Their deaths were too often dismissed as accidents, overdoses, or simply the result of a dangerous lifestyle. Samuel Little thrived because no one was looking for them, and by ignoring the vulnerable, society allowed him to continue. But his confessions did something unexpected. They breathed life back into dozens of cold cases scattered across the country. Investigators from Florida to California reopened files long gathering dust. Families who had waited decades for answers suddenly had names, dates, and places they had thought they would never hear again. Still, the haunting reality remains. Many of Little's victims are unidentified to this day. Some were never reported missing. Their bodies remain buried in unmarked graves, their names lost to time. Samuel Little remembered them all, every face, every detail. He carried their memories with chilling clarity until the very end. But the world had forgotten theirs. And that is the final cruelty of Samuel Little's legacy. Not just the staggering number of lives he stole, but the silence that allowed him to keep taking them, unchecked, unnoticed, and unchallenged for nearly half a century. Samuel Little may be gone, but his victims' stories must never be buried again. What do you think allowed Samuel Little to escape justice for so long? Comment below with your thoughts and subscribe for more true crime documentaries exposing the darkness hiding in plain sight.